All right. Why CoPilot is making programmers worse at programming. September 11th, 2024. Nice. Thank you, Darren Horrocks. Over the past few years, an evolution of AI-driven tools like GitHub's CoPilot and other large language models, LLMs, have promised to revolutionize programming. By leveraging deep learning, these tools can generate code, suggest solutions, and even troubleshoot issues in real time, saving developers hours of work. While these tools have obvious benefits in terms of productivity, there's a growing concern that they may also have unintended consequences on the quality and skill set of programmers. Crazy. It's funny that if you shortcut the pain of learning, that it might have consequences. That can't be right. I mean, that can't be right, right? Probably not. I would just assume that if you shortcut it, it's actually working smart, and we all know you should work smart, not hard, right? Like, why would you ever work hard? That's what AIs are for. I just work smart. Why would you ever learn something you could look up? I refuse to learn how to do a for loop and go. Refuse. Never waste your brain space. Anyway, sorry. I just put all the phrases together that I hate and turn it into one 30-second talk. Erosion of core programming skills. One of the most significant risks of relying on tools like CoPilot is the gradual erosion of fundamental programming skills. I mean, this just happens like anybody that does language hopping, that goes around and likes to learn a lot of different languages. You know that this is just a fact of life. If you aren't on the ground programming it, you forget all the little things. Like yesterday, I haven't programmed Rust in 8 months. And so I opened it up to just quickly import a library from Rust and do something. And I forgot that you have to first mod the thing and then you can use the thing. You know, like you forget all the little details. You still understand like the basics of it, but it's easy to forget the little details. And so when you actually do the thing yourself, you're just like, crap. For, is it in or is it of? Like when TJ and I were doing co-programming, I said in and it should have been of. And just that's simply because I haven't done it. You just forget the little things. And they're really easy to rehydrate, right? But they're very easy to forget. And so when you do none of the little teeny tiny things when it comes to problem solving, when you don't do those hundreds, if not thousands of little problem solvings every day, that little problem solving atrophies. Anything you don't do atrophies. Completely normal. No one should be surprised by that take. I think everybody should just 100% agree. Like I can look at Rust code. Generally, I can look at almost any Rust code that's not super advanced pin project ones, and I can just go, oh yeah, this is what's happening. I can still read Rust code. I just can't program it off my the tips of my fingers that well. In the past, learning to code involved hands-on problem-solving, debugging, and deep understanding of how code works at various levels, from algorithms to low-level implementation details. AI assistants, while useful, often allow developers to bypass these steps. For instance, rather than deeply understanding the underlying structure of an algorithms or learning how to write efficient loops and recursion, programmers now just accept auto-generated code snippets. Over time, this could lead developers who can't effectively solve problems without AI assistance because they never fully developed the problem-solving and critical thinking skills necessary for programming. I think this is why so many senior devs were so into AI to begin with. We already all had this notion built into our head. And so it was really easy to just go, oh yeah, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. Whereas new people don't even have that, right? New people don't even have that whole thing, right? And AI made it really easy. And so I can see this being this was a problem for me. And I'll give one more quick story. When I was building a plugin with Lua is when I kind of quit using CoPilot in, I forget what it was, April maybe, or March. I used CoPilot since the day they announced it. Nat Friedman, CEO at that time of GitHub, gave me personal access to GitHub all the way until just last March. So I used it a lot. I'm not saying, oh, I only used a little bit. I knew what's his name? The Pope, T Pope, was writing the plugin before CoPilot was even out. Like I knew these things. And so I knew NeoVim was going to have a plugin. I knew all this stuff. I was completely on board. I thought it was fantastic. I was very excited about it. I still remember my first experience having an LLM generate me code, and it was absolutely incredible. But then when I turned it off, I realized I couldn't write a for loop in Lua. And that's when I was like, all right, I got to stop. I've accidentally handed my skills to something else, and I don't want to do that. Now, you could argue you do want to do that because you believe that at some point those skills are worthless due to AIs improving. I'm saying, hey, I don't know if they're going to get there anytime soon. So maybe you don't want to hand them off quite yet. This is not like a phone and memorizing phone numbers. This is a little bit different. You may not want to do the same thing. LSP does the same thing. In some level, an LSP does do the same thing. Over-reliance on auto-generated code. With tools like CoPilot, developers can quickly produce working code without fully understanding its mechanics. This leads us to what is known as code dependency, where developers learn too heavily on AI-generated solutions without checking for correctness, efficiency, and maintainability. By the way, the maintainability one is interesting. There was a study done that showed that code generated between 2018 to 2021, right before LLMs came onto the scene in coding, every line of code on GitHub on average changed every 6 months. After LLMs, up until this point, it's every 2 weeks on average. It just goes to show churn rate of lines has greatly changed. Now, I don't know if that's true universally. I don't know how many projects they looked at. I don't know all the things that they applied this study to, but it is a very interesting study just by itself. When you can produce code faster, you can get more churn, and correctness may be less frequent. One key issue with auto-generated code is that it may not always be the optimal solution for the specific problem. With proper vetting, programmers might accept inefficient, buggy, or insecure code that works at first glance but causes problems in the long run. This reliance reduces the incentive to refactor or even review the code, which could harm the code bases and team productivity over time. Yeah, I mean, something that people don't talk about is, watch this little thing. This is kind of like an interesting thing. Twitter, feel free to participate in as well. Press 1 if you enjoy code reviews, if you enjoy reviewing code. Generally speaking, I would say about 2/3 probably are not huge fans of reviewing code. I think that's a pretty fairish statement. People generally don't like to review code. As AIs go on, that will be as the more you integrate with AIs, the more you're just reviewing code. You're not even writing code. And for me, that's such a hard trade-off because I don't enjoy the process of reviewing code. I tend to not look as closely when I review code. And so when I do that, I find that I don't look as closely as I should, and I often let bugs slip in with CoPilot. I was never a great reviewer of code. I've never been a great reviewer of code. Some people I feel like are just much better at reviewing code. I've never been good at reviewing code. I feel like I always have to bring things down and run it and debug through it for me to really get how someone else thinks and why they do stuff. Then it helps me, but I often review code and I just find that I miss easy bugs. But when I review my own code, by the way, here's a pro tip, a really big pro tip. Before you make a pull request, load up a diff on GitHub or on Stash or whatever process you use and look at your own code. And you'll be able to pick out so many problems. And it's because when you go onto GitHub or you go onto Stash, you go into code reviewer mode, but then you already have your full understanding of the code. And you will find so many little things you go, oh, yeah, I see. I totally messed. I could do that way better. Oh, I see that. Oh, I could definitely do that one better, right? It's actually a really good process to help improve yourself, is doing the difference between writing your code and reviewing your code. I don't believe, and I know some people say they can do it. I don't think you should do it from within your editor. You should do it in GitHub UI because you switch modes. Because if I do something within Vim, I'm doing it within my Vim mode. I'm not doing it within reviewer mode. Very different experience. Yeah, being able to see your changes at once helps to see what you've done. Yeah, because I know you can do that in VS Code. You can do that in Vim. It's not hard to do it in Vim. I can look at diffs in Vim. It's just the fact that my mentality changes when I'm on GitHub versus when I'm in my editor. And it's subtle. And I try not to no matter how much you think you can do it, I don't think you can do it as well. Because it's just a completely different. And think about it this way: when you work in the same place you always work, it's really easy to be in your work zone. But when you go and work somewhere else, it creates a different feel, right? And so if you go to a coffee shop to try to only crank out code when you really need to crank out code, the once every week or once every couple week trip to the coffee shop is like your raging programming session. And for whatever reason, you could just jump into it and do it so well. It's because, environment matters. Environment plays a large role in how you think and do things. All right, lack of ownership and responsibility. AI-assisted code generation can lead to the phenomenon where developers become detached from the code they write. When a developer writes every line of code manually, they take full responsibility for its behavior, whether it's functional, secure, or efficient. In contrast, when AI generates specific portions of code, it's easy to shift the sense of responsibility onto AI assistants. I'm not sure. I guess I don't feel that. That's kind of, it's a unique take. Maybe people feel this. I don't really feel this, but it's interesting. By the way, I did say something about LSPs and not learning. What I mean by LSPs and not learning, just so everybody understands, is that how many people know the standard library of what they use really well? Or have you offloaded the learning of the standard library to your LSP so that it autocompletes and shows you what it is? I think LSPs are great, by the way. I love them for navigation. I love them for finding references. I love them for refactoring. As far as autocomplete itself goes, I think it makes things easy, so I use it, but I don't know if it's great. Right? Like, I don't know if it's always a perfect win. So it's kind of like I see both the benefit and the negativity. I'd love to just have LSP navigation. Oh, that'd be so good. When a tool hands you the solution immediately, you're less likely to seek alternative approaches. Also very fair. This is a very fair statement. Experiment with different methods or fully understand the trade-offs of different implementations. This convenience, while beneficial in the short term, reduces the number of learning experiences that contribute to long-term skill development. This is fair. This is fair. Are you going no LSP as an experiment? I'll talk to TJ, and I'm going to see if I can disable autocomplete. And just disable autocomplete, and that's it. Keep everything else but autocomplete. I think it'd be a lot of fun to really... I think it'd be really fun to be able to still have like auto imports, to be able to still have refactoring, still be able to have jump to definition, still be able to have find references, go to declaration, like go through all of those things, but not have autocomplete. Because navigation, I think, is really important. Navigation is a fundamental time, right? Disable compy, yeah, I'm going to play around with it. Just disable NeoVim compy, yeah. Well, I'm curious the levels of things I can do, you know? I want to experiment with, is that actually good? I don't know. Dependency on proprietary tools. Another downside of AI-driven tools is the dependency they create on proprietary platforms like GitHub CoPilot. When developers start using these tools, they become increasingly reliant on them to generate, troubleshoot, and optimize their code. I know there was free for verified students, teachers, and maintainers of popular open source projects. I want to say that again. Free for verified students. I want you to ask yourself, if you are going to a 4-year university that's going to teach you about data structures where you have to program and create data structures, do you think CoPilot is a net benefit or a negative? And what do you think that is with the reliance of them right here? I think it's negative. Depends on how you use it. You're probably right. Depends on how you use it. If you don't use it, it's probably better than if you use it. But I mean, you do have to realize that if you type the function quicksort and then you start writing, each line will be auto-completed perfectly according to some implementation of quicksort. I just think the dependence thing is kind of an interesting argument, which is this is a form of selling you a product. Now, you could argue this is a good form of selling a product. I'm not saying it's a good or bad form. I'm just saying it is a form of selling a product. And the fact that they're intentionally selling it to students for free, there is something about that feels, I'm just saying, it feels a little strange, okay? It's like, hey, bro, just come on. It's just a quick line. It's just like a little quick line. It's not a big deal. You know, you're not just, hey, I want you to have a free night out on me, okay? First drinks on me. It's not a big deal. Don't worry. Don't worry. This creates a problem where the tools fail, change their terms of service, or become too expensive. Additionally, this dependency on AI tools can isolate developers from broader programming communities and open source tools that encourage peer collaboration and knowledge sharing, further hindering their growth skill set. I don't know if that I can't agree with this one in any sense because I just don't see how that happens. The first one's free classic. Yeah, it really is the first one's free classic. Perhaps one of the most concerning effects of AI code generation is that it can create a false sense of expertise among developers. A developer might feel proficient in a programming because they can quickly generate code with the help of CoPilot, even though they don't fully understand the code. This is actually a really, really great, this is actually a really amazing statement, and I never thought about this, which is you can most certainly get this idea that you are an expert when you're actually not an expert. Like if you start using Rust and you find that you can start kind of programming a lot of things kind of easy, you might think that. By the way, I see myself in this article. Even me, who's good enough, I kind of feel this. I feel this is real. Do we not feel that way about script kiddies too? No, script kiddies are just attempting to cut and paste and do what they got to do, right? They're not attempting to become programmers, as far as I can tell. They're just using what they can to make something happen, and that's okay. Like if your goal with programming is just to make a product, then you're going to use the least friction path, right? You will always choose the path to where you're trying to learn. It's just how it goes. So if your only goal is to produce a product that works for people to use, you will probably choose the thing that can produce the product as fast as possible. You're not thinking about maintenance. You're not thinking about all the other stuff. You're just choosing the thing that is done. So you could, so if you're using these things, I actually really agree with this because I also had the exact same problem. I was not as good at Lua because I was using it all the time to generate code. Like CoPilot was just generating the code, so I just wasn't as good. This can be particularly dangerous when developers move into more complex areas of software engineering like performance optimization, concurrency, or security, especially security. Remember, the last 10 years of software has been rife with security bugs. GitHub has been trained off the last 10 years of software. Put those two ideas together, okay? Where a deeper understanding of the code is critical. Without the foundational knowledge, developers can make mistakes that are costly in both time and money. In short, if you are a developer, if you as the developer do not understand the code, do not understand how you got to where you are, do not understand how to solve the problem yourself, copying and pasting code from an LLM and being spoon-fed the answer is not going to make you a better programmer. It's going to make you more reliant on the robot, and you will never be able to do anything that the robot can't already do. Because I think the problem I have with this takeaway is that why is it bad to rely on the robot, right? If people are correct and we're inevitably always marching towards better and better LLMs, then why is it bad to rely on the robot? And that's the question you have to answer, because it doesn't matter that I don't like doing that. That's the real question. Because if this is true, if robots are always going to get better, they're going to keep on getting better at the rate they've been getting good at, then why does it matter? And if you can't answer that question, then I don't think your argument is worth a lot. And so even though you handed out all these ideas, which I think are pretty good, which is, you have this reduced ability to kind of, you have this dependency, you create a dependency, you have a reduced narrow thinking, which I think is really good. This narrowed critical thinking I think is a really good section, but in the end, you're only solving big problems now. You're not solving little problems. So why not just have the robot do it? Why do you care if the robot does it? So let me invert it for a quick moment and try a different approach to this. Let me get my words together. The robot can't innovate, and innovation without understanding is very difficult and unlikely. Yeah, fair. Because if the robot makes mistakes, you should be the one who judges. Well, you could also get an LLM to explain errors that happen. Remember that LLMs are really good at explaining errors, and so therefore you could even use an LLM to solve your errors. Yeah, I didn't realize this was one of his articles. I don't think Pirate Software is a hypocrite. I think Pirate Software has done really great things, so I don't think so. Disagree. I would say it this way. One of the worst aspects of programming in general, and one of the things that I think is most destructive in people's careers, is learned helplessness, where the problems and the things you can solve, you need a definite answer for. I think LLMs can enhance that problem. And so perhaps, does it matter you understand all code? I don't think it does matter that you need to understand all code. I think that code that is confusing to you, I think it could be really great if you learned how to read it by having an LLM explain it to you. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. Maybe that would even help me move faster in code I'm deeply unfamiliar with. The real problem comes to right here. You don't understand you don't understand how you got to where you are. If you are helpless and you constantly have to rely on something else to tell you every single time the steps you need to take, you are creating an unhealthy dependency. You are offloading your critical thinking and your ability to solve problems larger than small things in front of you, right? Like you probably know how to filter a list of items based on ID or based on some property. You can do that, but if you can't see how to set these bigger things up, you know you have a blind spot. So fix the blind spot. Do not become helpless. for me, LLMs and all this stuff, I don't worry about most of it. What I worry about is learned helplessness. It's that everything you do, this one, a false sense of expertise is a form of learned helplessness, right? Dependency is an obvious form of learned helplessness. Not being able to think through problems because you see a solution and then you can only think of a solution through one box is a form of learned helplessness, right? You turn yourself into a smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller point. And I just don't think that is good. Flip, take that out. The name is be novel. Come up, ponder, be inspired. Do the things that make you great at being creative. If you've never, there is something so glorious about sitting there thinking through a problem and then what feels like a flash, you can almost just see the entire layout of kind of what you want to build. And then you got to go and build that thing. And that's an amazing and great experience. And it's something that makes it makes it so that you can have really big problems that you can solve. And you don't have to feel so small or confined to just like the space you're working in, but you feel like anything that you come across, you can get to a solution, whether or not it's the best solution. And that's a great place to be. And I'm not saying LLMs will take away or it will make you better or worse at that. But if you only rely on things to give you the answers all the time, it will make you worse. The ability to do that yourself is the skill you're after. And programming is the expression of that ability. The name is the Prime Engine.